Hi everyone. This set of flip notes is going to cover four major important figures for the 20th century. And as always, make sure that you're following along and writing in your packet. And if you have any questions, let me know. We're going to start with Margaret Thatcher. She was known as the Iron Lady. She is a prime minister from Great Britain. And so remember that Great Britain, it's actually probably the UK at this point, the United Kingdom, England, it's that coast, that island country on the north of Europe. And they're a very big ally of the United States, have always been, really since we gained our independence, have become a major ally of the United States. Margaret Thatcher worked for free trade, which meant lowering the interest rates. And not the interest rates, rather the tariff rates between countries so that there could be more trade internationally to get the government out of their economy in general. It's a very laissez-faire, very modern-day American Republican concept of economic systems. And she continued to develop the United States relationship and maintain that strong alliance that we have with Great Britain. And she also was responsible for maintaining the British control of the Falkland Islands. So the Falkland Islands is an island chain off the coast of South America. I want to say off the coast of Argentina, that the British have controlled for, at this point, centuries. They picked it up as part of their colonial empire when they were doing the Age of Discovery, where we talked about like Sir Francis Drake and circumnavigation of the world and that sort of thing. They took over the Falkland Islands. They were using it as a military base. And Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister in control when the Argentinians wanted to take back those islands. And she committed troops and held a war. It's called the Falkland War, where she defended those islands and maintained that control. This is a very anti-feminist statement, but a lot of people believe that women shouldn't be in positions like prime minister or president or that sort of thing of a country, because women wouldn't have the desire maybe to commit people to war. Women wouldn't have the stability of mind. I'm not really sure how to phrase that in order to make those decisions, because women are generally more sensitive to the needs of the people around them. And Margaret Thatcher obviously disproved that concept because she committed troops and saved these islands. So that's her. The next one is another woman, Indira Gandhi. I always get the question that is she related to Mohandas Gandhi, who we haven't talked about yet, but we will in our next set of notes, which will be after all this. It's actually the next day that we do notes. But she is not related to Mohandas Gandhi. She is related to some other key figures in India, but Gandhi is actually a fairly common last name in India. Indira was, again, the prime minister. So these are two countries, Britain and then India, as a former colony of Britain, have a system where you don't have a president, you have a prime minister who's generally elected from the legislature, not from the people. But they serve a lot of the same functions. And she actually maintained a relationship not with the United States and Great Britain during the Cold War, but with the Soviet Union. And a lot of that came from proximity, right, geographically. When you're looking at your map here, you've got India, you've got China, and then the Soviet Union is just north. But also because there's a lot of bitterness that had occurred between India and Great Britain during the Indian independence movement of the 1940s. So naturally, when you've just fought against a power, you probably aren't going to ally yourselves with them. She also develops their nuclear program. So what that means is that it was under her leadership that the nuclear weapons program was developed in India. They nicknamed it Smiling Buddha, which I think is really funny. but their first successful bomb tests were in the 1970s. So remember that this entire unit, the whole context is this concept of deterrence, this concept of an arms race where you're building up weapons in order to protect your country, right? The more weapons that you have, the least likely you are to be attacked. And so she made sure that India had those resources so that they could also be protected from the nuclear problem. All right, our next leader is Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev is the president of the Soviet Union during the 1980s. He's the leader of the Soviet Union at the same time as Ronald Reagan. And it's actually him that Ronald Reagan is appealing to when he's asking for them to destroy the Berlin Wall. Ronald Reagan goes to Berlin and makes a very famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate where he says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." He's asking for a united Berlin. He's asking for the reunification of Germany instead of having an East and a West Germany where it's a democracy and it's communist. And Gorbachev is the leader that he's appealing to, and Gorbachev is the leader who's responsible for the destruction of the Berlin Wall. The other two things that he's very famous for are glasnost and perestroika. So remember that in a communist government, there's a lot of secrecy. There's not a lot of information. We can, turn on C-SPAN on your TV, or you can just, pull it up electronically on the internet or whatever, and watch what's going on in the House and in the Senate, unless it's a closed proceeding, which is very rare, and it's for like secret things. Secret's not the word I want to use. Confidential, that's still not the word I want to use. Classified. Classified is the word I'm looking for. If they were going to be discussing classified information, then it would be sealed. But other than that, we can get all kinds of information. We have something called the Freedom of Information Act, where you can find out all kinds of information about government employees, and that sort of thing. But the Soviet Union didn't have that because they were a communist government, and he created that system under glasnost. So glasnost, you see the O in glasnost, is for openness, which meant that you could, as a citizen of the Soviet Union, find out more information about your government, which was revolutionary. The other thing is perestroika, and I don't know if you can see the word restructure in that. Sure. You can see RESTR for restructure, right? Is where they restructured their economy. It was turning the Soviet Union from a command economy, a communist economy, where the government is controlling the businesses, into a free enterprise economy where you have individuals, entrepreneurs allowed to own businesses. He opens that up for them. And then, like I said, he's responsible for the destruction of the Berlin Wall. And our last guy, Deng Xiaoping, is from China, and he is the Minister of Finance. And what he's responsible for is changing the Chinese economy. So one of the reasons that we're trading partners with China, one of the reasons that China has been so successful economically, is that Deng Xiaoping in the late 1970s and 1980s was responsible for transforming their economy from a communist economy into a capitalist economy. That's what it means by he's reforming, right? He's changing it from a communist into a capitalist society in the same way that Gorbachev did for the Soviet Union in the late 80s and early 90s. Xiaoping is just about a decade earlier. And he also opened China up to international trade and really spurred on the successes that they've had economically, but still maintaining the communist control of the government. So China is in this interesting dynamic where the government is still communist, but their economy is a capitalist free market system, not exactly functioning the same way as ours, but much more similarly. He was actually named Times Person of the Year twice for a lot of the efforts that he was making in transforming their economy. All right, and that's all I got. Have a great day.